I have a question that is biographical to you, and I want you to correct my memory if I'm wrong. With the exception of Algernon Black, I think you are the only ethical leader who is actually investigated by the FBI. And I suspected that when you told the story, you had, although you're very self-effacing and very reserved in many ways, I detected a little bit of quiet joy in being able to relate that. It was during the Vietnam War when you were very outspoken, as Amanda had mentioned, and you had basically said the FBI had done some covert investigation about your critique of the war in Vietnam, and these are my words, not yours, I'm paraphrasing, and you went on to say, those dopes, all they had to do was walk into the Washington Ethical Society and pick up copies of my platform addresses that were on the literature table, and they could very well know what my position was. They didn't have to waste taxpayer money doing covert investigations. My question is, do I have that story right?
You have it almost right.
Almost, okay.
The FBI had investigated me as early as my college years because I was supposed to be the organizer of a communist cell at Stetson University here in Florida because I had actively supported desegregation and voting rights for black people, and therefore I must be a communist. I'm sure my portfolio has grown. I have never checked it out. But the incident you talk about was not the FBI, which had a legal right to inquire. It was the CIA, which at that time illegally spied on some 14 Washington-based organizations. And because it was illegal and was exposed, Vice President Rockefeller was commissioned to make a study of what had been done covertly by the CIA to engage in espionage against our American people. The Rockefeller report, which is a printed report that thick, tells the story. And when Rockefeller announced this to the public, it was electric. It was a front page story. The Washington Post was most interested in that story. I had moved already to New York, and I was sitting in the living room of Horace Freese and his wife, Ruth, who was the youngest daughter of Felix Adler. And our conversation was interrupted by a telephone call. Ruth answered the phone and said, "There's someone here who wants to speak with you. The society told them you were visiting here." It was a reporter from the Washington Post, and he said, "The Rockefeller report was rendered today." I said, "Yes, I heard that on the news." He said, "Did you know you are in it?" I said, "No." "Well, you were one of those, and the leader of one of those organizations which was spied upon illegally by the CIA, and we want to make a major story. We would like your comment." I thought I would like to be in that paper. But there are a lot of other people who will make, "Oh, you know, this is terrible, this is tragic, this is overwhelming, we're about to go down in flames." Okay, it was serious, but I decided to make another tact. They're going to be very serious and viewing with alarm. I'm going to spoof the whole thing. So I made that comment that they had indeed planted an asset, as they are called, to report on all the activities of the society and make a report. The written account consisted almost entirely of quotes from my addresses. So I said to the reporter, it was really a waste of government resources to put an asset in the society when they could have purchased any one of my addresses for 15 cents. But I appreciate the contribution that they made. I trust that this asset made a good pledge. We needed the money. And I got in the story.
Hi, Ed. My name is Linda Napoli. I'm from the Ethical Humanist Society of Long Island, and I'm so honored to meet you. I think you're a hero. My question is, you've lived through a number of tumultuous eras in our nation, and thinking about what's happening today, what's your opinion in terms of how bad is it compared to before?
We are faced with a number of crises, a number of tormenting issues all at one time. Climate change. We are ruining our planet, and we don't have much time to correct it. We see the rise of white nationalism. We see tribalism, religious tribalism, in which you chop off people's heads if they don't agree with your point of view. Muslims killing Muslims because they are not orthodox enough, because they are not primitive enough. This madness, it's in Europe, and the new nationalism that is throughout European society and American society. And we're being taught to hate people who are different from us in color or culture. That is the crisis we face. We face the unspoken crisis in education. We are dumbing down our educational systems enormously. A few of the schools are the best schools in the world, but they are the privileged schools. The people who are in the ghetto and the poor whites, their schools teach very little. And every poll shows that more and more Americans are willing to accept would welcome a military government because they think it would be stronger. That is a growing thing. And our young people, by and large, are showing in every test that they are more and more ignorant of our history as a people. You have to understand our history. You have to understand the American experience, the things we've lived through, the struggles we have made to reach whatever level of democracy we've achieved. And we're losing it because we are allowing a generation and new generations to be ignorant of who they are. I know that a number of times I've encountered people who say, well, I don't need to remember all that history. I don't need to know about the labor movement or the rise of this or that, because I can always look it up on the internet, or we can ask Alexa. Well, Alexa doesn't put anything in your brains except factoids. If you don't know how to organize them, if you don't know what they mean, it's meaningless. The dumbing down of America is such that if we go down this path, we will become a nation of amazingly stable geniuses who are so smart that we don't need to know anything. So we really have to turn around as a people. And you and I have to be the people who do it.
I'm really new here, so I've known about the Ethical Culture Society for about 6 months now. And I heard you talk about the 90-hour work weeks. And, and what I wanted to ask you is, in that environment, especially doing really stressful work that can sometimes feel like a constant uphill battle, how often did you hit empty? And when you did, how did you refuel? What was your strategy for being able to get back into it and to have this lifelong service?
First, about the 90-hour week. the New York Society faced a financial crisis in the time when I was there, and had to cut enormously its staff. There were 4 full-time leaders when I went there. For some time, I was the only one. But everyone fought to maintain the same level, the same programs that they'd had before. And I was working 90 hours a week. The board of the society decided it was time to have an in-depth study. So they got 2 experts to come in and evaluate the efficiency with which the staff was doing its job. Mr. and Mrs. Lamb, their names. And they studied intensively. They talked to various members. They looked at what we were doing. And they came to me and said, you know, you say you work 90 hours a week, and we doubted that. We thought you were exaggerating, but as we have measured your activities and documented your activities, we are convinced you do work 90 hours a week. But the members of the society will never believe that. So we are going to say you work 70 hours a week. We're going to say that the time you research and prepare your addresses is on your own time. So I guess I'm a guy who just worked 70 hours a week. Fortunately, Frederick Unger, who had insisted on publishing a book based on my radio talks, Sunday platform addresses, of what was happening at the time of the rise of the radical right. Unger said to me after the publication of that first book, Ed, I will publish any book you write. I want you to write books. And how did I refuel myself? I didn't. To tell you the truth, I had burned out at age 55. I renewed myself by sitting down in the quiet of my hometown and wrote 4 books. And by the way, I was not wasting my time. Those books have been perhaps the best extension, the most rewarding part of my ethical mission.
Thank you, Ed. And thank you so much for being here, for accepting our award, and for a life of service. So thank you all for coming out for this.